much.
Gotta get the order, Mike. It's the front button. Just press it.
I pledge
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yes, for these people. Okay. So a couple of things we need to remove from the agenda. Our county legislators needed to reschedule, so we're going to strike that. Huguenot Street draft regarding the closure, number 11, we're going to strike that.
Wow.
I made a mistake by not getting, so our board was comfortable with the draft agreement, and then I was supposed to turn that around and get it over to HHS so they could give it one more pass, and I didn't do that until recently, so that was my fault that they,
And Shade Tree is asking to let them have a meeting before we act on number 6.
number 6?
That's too
Okay,
soon.
so let's strike that. And then there was one other thing. Interview on number 1 under interviews, we're going to strike that and reschedule.
We were going to talk about drilling standard procedures. Would that be a public discussion or a executive session? I think it's public.
Actually, I would like to do it in exec for a specific reason
Okay.
related to litigation. So we can put that as something to talk about when we go into exec. Then I wanted to add sale of property to Stand 15 LLC. You could add that to the beginning of the agenda.
Sale of property to
Stan 15 LLC. And let's add a discussion about recording meetings in this room.
Where do you want to add that? The end or
Let's add a second item.
second one?
And we have to do 2 bookkeeping type items that Nancy shared with us. Let's add those at the end of the meeting.
Millbrook Preserve, have you added that?
Yeah, let's add Millbrook Preserve as the 3rd item.
Okay.
And under the consent for item number 3, we can strike out where it says insurance is pending. That use has secured insurance. And I think that was it. Does anyone else have anything to add or delete? No?
I'm sorry I was late, I was trying to arrange with someone to borrow keys from me and we were doing a wild duck check to the village.
Okay, I motion to
Be nice if
accept the
people-
agenda as amended. All in favor?
Um,
All right.
Can I ask what was it added for exactly?
We're going to discuss procedures regarding drilling.
Okay, good.
Don shared a
Yes,
document the other day.
I received that.
Okay, so anyone here to, or do we have any announcements? Anyone want to share anything? Nope. Anyone here for public comment? Nope. I motion we accept the agenda, consent agenda as amended.
Oh, I should
Second.
probably make an announcement. Sorry to be late. The NBR ad hoc committee had a public hearing, public session within the past week. It was very well attended, between 75 and 80 people. They all responded
Wow.
to a survey. The feedback, apparently the vibe in the room was very positive and productive. And on many of the items that people were given a visual survey, two photos to select from. Which do you prefer? More than half the respondents came to consensus on most every point. So it was a really good session in that way. And the effort continues. Okay.
Sure.
And just to add on to that, we're going to look to try and get the results of that out into the community through some of the local newspapers who maybe were not in attendance that night.
Do we want to add, maybe after we speak about Millbrook Preserve, add just a quick discussion on NBR? Because we got a note from that committee. I had some thoughts on some of the questions. So let's do that.
Okay.
Is that it?
So did we accept the consent agenda?
No.
Yeah, I interrupted you. I'm
Second.
sorry.
All in favor?
All right.
Okay. First business agenda item. So we've been in discussion with the property owner at 15 Platico Avenue. That's the Sam 6 building. And the idea would be to sell that property just north of 1,800 square feet of our parking lot because they're interested in constructing a new structure. And they would also then expand the parking area that would be used by just Sam 6 folks during the day, business hours, Monday through Friday, but then that would be available to the public nights and weekends. So it would be a net increase of 14 parking spots for the entire lot, and then the lot would be optimized in terms of aisle widths. And I think that the total change in impervious surface is not too significant. So we would end up with 14 new parking spots, but that property owner offered us $25,000 to purchase those 1,800 square feet. So we hired an independent firm to do an appraisal of the 1,800 square feet, and we received a report back at $20,025, and it was curious that it was exactly, or essentially the same amount, even though it was done by two separate appraisal firms, and neither one of them saw each other's work. So I would like to, we have a resolution here that essentially accepts that offer, where we would sell that square footage. And so in addition to the $25,000 the village would receive, 14 additional parking spots that would be created. Then we would have a new building that would be an additional rateable as far as new buildings on the village tax rolls. So we have a resolution here to accept that offer and then authorize the mayor to execute all transfer documents and other documents necessary to the concept of this transaction. So that's my motion.
Second.
Discussion?
Yeah. Do we know that this would be, binding in perpetuity?
Yes.
Would they be bound to this agreement in perpetuity?
Well, if we're selling the property, right, it would be a change to our deed and their deed.
No, I understand, but then the cession of the use of the parking spaces.
Well, so that would be an additional piece to this, is that we're going to grant them an easement to access their parking spots that are south of their existing building, so they will have to come in through our property. So there will be an agreement between that property owner and the village.
Okay. Okay.
So we get $25,000 and we get more parking? It would be nice
And
if
an
we could.
additional rateable.
And an additional rateable, yeah. It would be nice if we could take some of that money and reinvest it towards additional parking in other places of the village too. I have a concept. I'll bring it up in the executive session.
Cool, you have a concept for parking. So, do we have, did we have a second? I think we
Yeah,
did.
we did.
So, I'm calling the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great. So I think our next agenda item was the recording of meetings. This has been an ongoing struggle where this system was purchased a few years ago. I feel like we inherited this kind of difficult to handle system. We've been doing our best to try to make sure it works. I mean, we have a challenge here in that the videos are then streamed live onto channel 23. They're recorded so that they're then made available for 23 to rebroadcast. And then they're also recorded and uploaded to the village's YouTube channel. And then they're saved on our village website. So there's a few different steps. And it feels like technology has changed just within the last couple of years, in that it might be easier to use something like YouTube Live or Facebook Live to record meetings. I reached out to a college student in the digital arts department at SUNY to see if he had any ideas, but I think the idea was that we were going to try to discuss, what might make sense for the village to consider to kind of reduce the number of steps. I feel like our staff has done a good job of trying to figure out how this system works, but it's very prone to taking a left turn and then the camera's left on overnight, or a meeting didn't get backed up properly or saved properly. So that's kind of what we're struggling with regarding this procedure.
So is there no reason to return to what we were doing in the past?
Well, the disadvantage of that is, it's very expensive. We were paying a fair amount of money each month to have a human being record the meetings. I think the previous administration made a decision to purchase this hardware to save a great deal of money. I believe this hardware costs $9,000. Alex and I were speaking today about, the camera is probably working fine as far as what it's supposed to do. The challenge is the encoder is not as user-friendly as it should be. So maybe there's a way to purchase a new encoder to reduce the number of steps. I think that's what we need to explore.
I don't know that we have we certainly have expertise at this table, but we have a public access committee and a public access coordinator. Why don't we ask them to make a recommendation to us at their next meeting?
Sounds
Put
good.
them up, They get the big bucks.
Good idea.
With the number of problems that we've had in the 2 years that we've been in office, I'm embarrassed, and I feel like it's a failure of open government. If we need to invest money to fix it, we should.
And without pointing fingers, just as a fact, these changes that we're living with now, no one had really asked the public access people what they thought, and they might have had some different ideas. So let's try and do that this time around.
Yep, that's my understanding.
I messed up for the second meeting. Tim, when you asked, are we set with the consent agenda? I thought that was, have we decided what's in it? I did have one minor change to make to the minutes. So I think I did this last meeting too. I apologize.
That's fine.
So if we could
I'm fine with
reopen that, I'd appreciate it.
making that edit.
So it's just on the section about the Environmental Policy Board and the new rules for commissioners. I just wanted to make sure that it got into the minutes that the other provision that we had with regard to town residents serving on that committee was provided that no village resident had expressed interest. So that was the other provision, or caveat we put on that, and I want to make sure that got addressed in minutes.
So how would you change the language to the minutes?
As some in the appropriate sentence, I would just put comma, provided that no village residents has applied. And comma. You can decide where to put that in. Thank you, appreciate it.
Good.
And I guess I'd like to make a motion that the board approve those amended minutes.
Second?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
So, are we settled on that recording, waiting for a recommendation from the Public Access Committee?
So Alex, can you send an email to public access, or do you want me to? Okay, great.
Okay, so next item, the Affordable Housing Board. Dan, are you here to?
I was not actually, I thought, I was under the impression that Katie were going to be speaking on it today.
Yeah.
I'm not really prepared to lead
That's
that
fine.
conversation. So, I thought we were running late.
So we'll keep this on the agenda, and if they show up,
Yeah,
we'll
I
chat with them.
didn't hear that they weren't coming, so
Okay,
my apologies.
got it. Oh,
I think also traditionally, a lot of our meetings started at 7:30, so,
Oh, okay.
yeah,
I'll
so that
talk to
it's,
them and
it's
I'll
possible that they're
verify that they're all-
looking at that time frame. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next item, we were gonna have an update on the Millbrook Preserve. So we received some suggested new language for the conservation easement. I was a bit surprised in that we spoke about the idea of, for me, I think what's really important is that the village taxpayers who borrowed this money get paid back first. And then if there are proceeds after that, then they could be split 50-50. That was actually Dennis's suggestion to kind of once and for all get this conservation easement sorted out. So that the new suggestion is there's a window of 5 years where the assumption is that the borrowing would be paid off within 5 years, which I feel like is a fairly tight time frame to assume that we're going to pay back a $650,000 borrowing.
It wouldn't be surprising, given how good Nancy is at paying things down, but I agree with you, it would be pretty aggressive. Not unprecedented, but I wouldn't want to bank on it.
Yeah, I think that the goal here is to, we have a responsibility to protect taxpayers. So we're trying to make sure that taxpayers are not paying for a property that no longer exists in the unlikely situation of the conservation easement getting extinguished.
That figure I got from Nancy, in terms of the 5 years, and she said that there was a good chance that we would even pay it off sooner, as we have in the past with other bonds.
Sure, we could pay it off tomorrow, but we could also take 15 years to pay it off. I mean, I think the spirit of the concept is that we have to make sure that it's paid off first before we go ahead and provide any windfall as a result of an extinguishment.
So why don't we put in one set of circumstances if the bond is still not satisfied, another, in the case where it is. Maybe do you have a suggestion or proposal, Tim?
Well,
Isn't that what we suggested? That it's
that is
goes
what we
towards
suggested.
the bond, and if the bond's not paid back, it goes through the bond. If it is paid back, it gets split 50-50. That's what we suggested, 2 different provisions.
It's exactly what we suggested on 2 different occasions, and the response has been, a 5-year time frame. If a time frame is required just for the sake of, having lines in the sand in a document, why don't we just say 20 years, instead of 2022?
Do you want to come to the table, please,
And grab a
speak to
mic.
this? Thank you.
The 5-year timeframe was based on the resolution that the village bond is based on. And so if there's language that needs to be added that the bond will be extended based on the village not fulfilling their own requirement for the bond.
It's a
then we
bond
can add-
anticipation note that we.
Right,
we
but that's
don't
where that date
necessar-
came from for the 5 years. It's not that the Walker Valley Land Trust
But it
pulled
was
5 years.
it was never what we asked for. What we asked for is that the borrowing be paid off. And whether it's paid off in 5 years or 5 days or 50 years, the point is that we have to take care of taxpayers first.
And I understand that. So at the last meeting, while you and I discussed that, I went back to the Walker Valley Land Trust attorney, we put the language in. The bond is not physically tied to the property. So in order to find
It
the...
is.
It is not.
Okay, I checked with our treasurer, and it absolutely is.
I checked with the attorney and the title insurance, and the
Okay.
title report, and it is not.
I don't understand this, like, this approach to, trying to.
Work with this and make it work, so we put in language to
But
put
you're
in.
telling me that the bond is not tied to the property? It absolutely is.
It's not a mortgage against
We-
the property, which
I know
is-
it is not a mortgage against
So
the
that's what I'm
property,
s-
but there is no question that the reason that we are able to borrow the money is because
I'm
we
not
have.
questioning that.
Right, instead of getting bogged down on semantics, if verbiage works for you that says 5 years, if we make it 15, does that work for you?
Well, I'm absolutely willing to sign off on whatever the attorneys work out. The reason that our attorney put in the 5 years is that what the village bond itself that you all put in place states.
But it's
We
not
didn't
what
pu-
we said at the
Can I
last
finish
meeting.
my sentence? It is. You said
No,
based
it's
on the
not.
village bond being paid off.
It was an act of the board, so it is what we quote-unquote said when we.
It's what you have in
took
your
that
own
vote.
documents. So if there's additional verbiage that needs to be added to say, and if it's not paid off within the own timeline that the village board has set down, that you need additional time, the Walker Valley Land Trust is more than amenable to putting in those language.
Could we solve this problem?
Because what if
just
it's
by-
not done in 15 years? So within that deadline or whenever it is, we are absolutely fine with doing that,
Could we
absolutely.
solve this problem just by removing the reference to any time period?
I don't know if legally we can do that, so I don't know if there needs to be or when it is paid. I have to check with the attorneys on that.
Okay, so you'll check with the attorneys again, so.
That was my understanding at the last decision made. And I thought we had, by the way, a very happy decision based upon Dennis's recommendation, that there was no time frame, but we know we're paying off the bond.
Right.
So
And I'm not an attorney. I assume she put in that because it's what you guys have in it, but
All right, so we're,
Understood, so what,
and I understand the concerns you guys
Okay,
have,
then fine.
absolutely.
As long as you
But I'm
understand.
not an attorney, so I have to make
me
sure
too,
that we all.
me too, I'm a philosopher, so.
no.
Literature major, so
Long
let double masters, so we'll figure it out. But I'm absolutely willing to work with that. I just need to know what the concerns are and respond to that.
Well, I think that is the sole concern, that.
Totally understandable. But we didn't pull that number out of the air. It is from your
I
own.
appreciate that, but it wasn't in our last conversation either.
Right, it was, so I said I would go back to my attorney. You
I
guys
got
are gonna
you,
go back
got
to your
you.
attorney, and that's what
And
our
I-
attorney came back
I
with.
think we're back on the same page.
We're good. And
Okay, so from the village standpoint, is our preference to have the time, reference any time removed as a first choice?
Yes.
And as a fallback, 15 years? So if you
As
think- if you-
long a period as possible. We want maximum flexibility in trying to pay this off. And once it's paid off, everything's good.
I know, but I want to give her real clear guidance so
Okay.
that we're not doing this
We
for
would
another
prefer
4
to not
weeks.
have any time frame. If you need one, make it as big as you possibly can. And that'll be great.
understandable.
Thank you.
Okay,
And if we do
I'll
that,
even initial
we can
something.
perhaps approve this conservation easement.
Yes.
With the, if that change is made, is there any other items?
I
that-
think Will said that he still had other edits to make to the conservation easement. So you've been speaking with.
Yes.
With Will.
What he had in front of him, he was fine with, and essentially he said it's our vote. But in terms of I spoke with him again today, and he was fine with what we had and said it was our vote, and I'd be more than happy to vote to approve the easement.
Okay, so let's make sure that Will has reviewed this latest draft.
And let's let him know we plan on taking action at the next meeting. We can. And anything that he wants to contribute, anything you want to contribute, make sure that we're set to vote on this next meeting.
would be nice.
Let's get this done.
I kind of doubt that he wants to contribute anymore based on my conversation.
No, let's just double
Give it a
check.
chance.
Okay,
It's a big thing.
good show. See you again.
Okay, Church Street Open Air Market. Ariana, you want to update us on?
Hi, everybody. So I did a lot of talking to the entities on Church Street today, and I have gotten pretty much everybody comfortable with the idea. I know Krause's would still they're still a little bit hesitant, but they were willing to give it a go. A lot of people were supportive. They just wanted to have their concerns met, which I feel like between the conversations you have had with some of the entities on Church Street and myself, we have done that. A lot of people were actually very supportive, and one of the people said that he's both a property owner and a business owner, and they would like to see the street closed permanently. So I think that we have some support in terms of that, but everybody seemed down with the market, and they really liked the idea that I think you had brought up of not having anything for sale that would compete with the already existing businesses, and I assured them that we would adhere to that.
Did you speak with the temple at all?
There has been multiple conversations going with the temple, yeah, and their biggest concern is the idea of they don't have regular services on Sunday, but their biggest concern is the idea of unscheduled events, which could be like weddings or funerals. And they said that they don't happen that often, so it actually probably won't be that big of a deal. But we have, Don and I both said that we would work with them as necessary if there is like a real need, to maybe not have the market. If it's scheduled far enough in advance that I could contact everyone who would be at the market in order to tell them not to show up that day.
Funerals concern me in that regard.
Right, because funerals are a last minute thing. So I think if that were to happen, we might just not be able to have the street be completely open because it would be very last minute. But we could definitely try to make sure that there's more access from Academy and that we don't have tents and booths right in front of the building. And I think, there's definitely a lot of willingness on my part to work with them and figure out how to best make that happen. But I do feel strongly that if we want to have a successful market, it has to be a reliable market. And so having it closed often means that people won't attend it. So Don had suggested to me, how about we, say we could do this like 2 times per season and no more. And I said I definitely could live with that, but I think it's going to be pretty much a case-by-case basis. If there's a strong need, we'll figure it out. I'm willing to work
It
on
would
that.
be nice to have protocol in place.
I was
if
just gonna
there is
say,
some sort of a service.
I
not
think if we
just-
get some sort of a protocol, because if we need something in a hurry, that's when things get dicey. So, and I'll take it upon myself. I'll work with the rabbi and with the community, and we'll work out some sort of an arrangement.
Yeah, the
That
last
was
thing
my
we want
own-
to do is offend an entire family as they're heading to someone's funeral services.
Right, absolutely not. I recognize that that's something that obviously we can't control when funerals happen. So it's something that as long as I could be notified as soon as possible, then I can work with the vendors on how to best make it accessible for the people who need the synagogue.
Okay.
And you were saying that it's important that we greenlight this ASAP
Yes.
so you can work with vendors and they can plan for the summer.
Exactly. In meeting with Jay Armour, who had organized it last year, he said how it was just kind of this real last minute scramble, and he admittedly said he's a farmer, he doesn't do the organizing side of these things. So, it was kind of a sad market without a lot of vendors, and I think the closer we get to the start date of the market, the fewer vendors we will have, and then we're kind of setting ourselves up for failure in that sense. So if we can really get if you would all be willing to vote and greenlight this tonight, then I can get the application to vendors. I did let everybody know that this was on the village board agenda and that I'm working on helping it move forward, so that they should expect an application, and we do still have solid interest. But I think the closer we get to the start date, the less we'll be able to advertise and all of the things like that.
So could we make a motion that pending the development of the protocol that's been mentioned about emergency or funeral and or wedding events, that we could approve this now?
Second.
And one question for discussion: under the information we were given, the open air market will be managed by the market coordinator to be determined. Are we looking at her?
Yeah, but I don't know. I didn't want to just write myself in
yourself.
there. I don't know. Yeah.
All right.
Does one hire oneself? I don't know. Who hires me?
want to make sure there's someone steering the ship.
I guess I actually had one question regarding that, because one option would be that I open up a bank account in the name of the market and just kind of funnel the money through that market and then pay for things accordingly. The other would be to maybe do a trust and agency account with the village and have all of the vendors send their monthly payments here. The village would cut me a check, we would have, and it would be a line in the village budget, but I don't know if that's something that you guys are down with. That was one of the things I definitely failed to write to you about in advance,
I
but
would imagine we want to consult with the treasurer.
with Nancy, yeah, I would think so.
Yeah. So let's not include that though.
No, that doesn't have to be
in our
included in the motion.
But let's understand that there will be consultation with the treasurer about how to handle this financing.
I mean, I could also go that other route and it wouldn't be that big a deal, but
In the meantime, you could have a conversation with Nancy and figure it out.
okay, cool.
Yeah, I think that's preferable, actually.
Yeah, I do too. Also, just in terms of liability, that, you know, you don't have to take on something in addition.
Yeah, I have enough money that's not mine being funneled through my name, through my Burning Man community, so I would like to not have more because the taxes are just gonna be weird.
Okay?
Call the question.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Abstain.
What was that?
Abstain.
Cool. So that's it.
That's it?
Sweet.
Done, Kate.
Thank you.
So just, you know,
So Shade Tree Commission appointments.
Are we doing the reorg meeting?
Oh, sorry. So I'd like to set the reorg meeting for Monday, June 5th at 6 PM at Village Hall, 25 Plattekill Avenue.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That'll be an hour-long meeting because then there's a 7 o'clock meeting later that day. Shade Tree Commission appointments. I motion that we approve Mary Elizabeth Bannon as chair and Christine Marmo as co-chair.
I'm wondering if you'd accept a friendly amendment. As part of the discussions with regard to leadership at Shade Tree, there was a discussion among the board a while back, I think, about creating the position of senior member. So there's interest in the Shade Tree Commission in the former chair, Jason Rosenberg, being termed senior member as a
Friendly amendment accepted, so we're going to add Jason as senior member, give him that designation. Or did we get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, next item, proposed local law for Gateway Zoning District footprint amendment. I motion, so we have a resolution here that involves setting a public hearing for June 7th at Village Hall. And this is basically just to change the map of the
June 7th or 14th?
I'm sorry, it says 14th on this, this agenda, which is incorrect. It should be the 7th, right, Alex?
Well, the first meeting of June is the 7th.
Okay.
No, it's 14th.
Oh,
It's the
It
second
is.
Wednesday.
So it should be the 14th. So maybe in the resolution,
Oh,
can we?
did I miss that?
Yeah, the resolution says the 7th.
June 7th, yeah.
So make that,
So just change the resolution. See, under the second whereas, schedule oh no, I'm sorry. The village board wishes to schedule a no, this is what needs to be updated. Public hearing for June 7th at 7 PM. So that should just be changed to the 14th. Okay? And then we're also, for the purposes of seeker compliance, we're declaring the village lead agency and identifying this as an unlisted action. So that's one motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the next item has to do with our sidewalk project. So we're authorizing the mayor to execute the required documents for the implementation and funding of its first instance 100% of federal aid eligible costs of a transportation federal aid project and appropriating funds therefore. So this is our fourth section of village sidewalk, fixing Huguenot Street, adding sidewalks to the corner of Henry W. and Church and Henry W. and Prospect.
So I haven't seen any recent email communication on this. What type of time frame are we looking at? Are we still?
Unfortunately, not construction in 2017, but we're dotting i's and crossing t's, and it's moving forward. And yeah.
Good to know. Is there a motion?
Yeah.
Second?
So, all in favor?
Aye.
And then the next item has to do with paying the final amount of $23,123.23. This was the work that was done with the CDBG funds where the sewer main was repaired at Mohawk Avenue, just above Route 208. So it's just a motion to make this payment.
Second.
Dennis, second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, discussion of allocation to energy stocks in the fire department portfolio. So we currently have just north of $300,000 in the portfolio of securities that is it's for the fire department members, and just with lots of discussion about portfolios that include exposures to fossil fuels. I just took a closer look at the portfolio companies in this portfolio, and there's about 38% of the portfolio are equities, but then there's a fair number of investments in this portfolio that are credit investments, so like corporate bonds. Basically in the investment world, and I spoke with the portfolio manager, there are ways to buy an ETF that does not have energy stocks in it, but they're kind of new, they're not terribly efficient. It's basically like, even if we go through the exercise of trying to have less energy stock exposure in this portfolio, there's no way to create an alternative to all the corporate bonds that are in this portfolio, and we'd only be kind of like scratching the surface for the equity stocks. So, I thought it was worth taking a closer look at, just to say that we have examined this. But the alternative would be to use a completely different portfolio strategy, like hire a different investment manager. I don't know if that's something that we would consider, but I just wanted to at least have this conversation publicly to recognize that we are thinking about these things and their impacts.
Does the village have any other investments other than this money for the fire department? I was wondering why the fire department is singled out.
It's the only portfolio
Good
of
answer.
stocks that because any of the other staff that pays into the pension fund, goes up to New York State, and that's the pension fund that the comptroller is responsible for.
Okay.
Remember, we wrote a resolution 2 years ago asking them to divest from the investment manager that we didn't have a direct holding with Pilgrim Pipeline, but that same portfolio manager invested in another fund that had exposure to Pilgrim Pipeline. So that was what our resolution was about. What do you think, Tom?
Well, I'm aware that even when you have an actively managed fund which is out of your hands, you might, unless it's a state-run fund, you can still call your fund manager and say, please take me out of Fox News, for example, or something like that. I don't know what the rules of a particular fund management firm would be, but it would not be impossible, I think, that those rules would permit a telephone call by whoever is the person who has fiduciary responsibility from our side to call and say, we at least prefer, if we don't demand, that fossil fuel investments be eliminated from at least the direct stock portfolio.
Right, but that's not really an option for the manager that we currently use.
It's not an option.
No, because he uses ETFs. And I looked at this portfolio pretty carefully, and I actually was impressed with the different exchange-traded funds that he uses. He has like a lot of good quality investment managers that he invests through these ETFs, and the fees on the ETFs are very reasonable, and his fee to do this investing on behalf of our fire department is really quite good. You know, we're getting pretty good service at a very fair rate.
I like ETFs.
Yeah.
So if the conclusion is that, at least at the present time, it's better not to do something than to do something hasty or foolish, then okay.
Yeah, that's my conclusion, is that this is a very reasonable investment strategy for someone who is comfortable with fossil fuels, especially because the gentleman who manages the ETFs does not charge a lot, and the investments he chooses are of good quality and not expensive as far as fees. So I think it was worthwhile to take a look, but I don't see a reason to jettison the manager we're currently using.
This is certainly your wheelhouse, so thanks for looking into it and reporting back. I'm comfortable with proceeding as you laid
So
out.
no motion to be made and
There's nothing to do.
Nothing to do, yeah. Okay, so next item, let's do number 12, resolutions, bills, and claims. I motion that we approve the bills and claims.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. We left off the NBR thing.
Was there anything else at the end before NBR?
There was the Nancy's bookkeeping item.
Oh, yeah. Where's the language for that?
The water and snow payments.
Yep. So, I'm motioning that we authorize the treasurer to re-levy unpaid water and sewer balances onto owners' real property taxes. She shared the details of that in an email to all of us. That's my first motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And then the next item was request the treasurer authorization to re-levy 2 unpaid judgments onto the owner's real property taxes for outstanding snow, ice removal. Again, per attached judgments that we received copies of earlier.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So NBR, we got a note from chair of the NBR committee asking for some background on the discussion that took place in 2015 when the NBR was created, when Maurice Whiteman was involved in that discussion. And I would just offer a couple of things. So one of the reasons that B3, that's what it was called at the time, was changed is there was conflicting language in the B3 where it said, on one hand, all new development must be mixed-use multi-story, and then the next paragraph said something like, but when single-story structures are constructed, blah, blah, blah. So like that was like red flag number one that needed to be sorted out because the code simply didn't make sense. The other thing that's important to note is that B3 always permitted 4 stories with a height of 45 feet max, and then one of the changes, Maurice was a proponent of giving a little bit flexibility so you could have a taller retail store on the ground floor. So that's why it went from 45 feet to 50 feet. I think there's been some confusion where folks thought that the B3 only allowed 3 stories, and then in 2015 it was changed to 4, but that was never the case. And then I also would share that Maurice was a big proponent of flexibility in terms of permitted uses, and there was a great deal of discussion, because if you look at our code and you look at particular zones, and it's like, well, what's allowed here? And you read through it, and like, it's kind of interesting in that some of the uses are like completely outdated businesses that no one is involved with anymore. And then I think what Maurice was trying to suggest was, and you could see why both routes make sense. Like, it makes sense to have code that, you know, is really clear in terms of what uses are permitted, and then it makes sense to have a nimble code that allows a planning board to kind of deal with unique situations as they arise. And I remember the one example that Maurice cited was like a car dealership, for instance. We didn't feel comfortable with the idea of a car dealership because when we currently think of car dealerships, you think of like a lot with hundreds of cars. And Maurice was like, well, what about in the future when, you know, cars are made to order, and let's say it's like almost like a kiosk of a store, and you go in and, you know, you speak with the salesperson, and then, you know, maybe it's even made with a 3D printer right there on site, or maybe it's like made to order. So it's essentially more of an offering that doesn't include all of the inventory that we're familiar with car dealerships. So like, he was just saying like that was his struggle with limiting what would be allowed there, because he's like, well, at some point in the future, technology changes. We can't anticipate, you know, what we're comfortable with today, and that's why he was a proponent of having, you know, everything by a special use permit to provide that flexibility. But it also makes perfect sense why having all of that flexibility can be kind of anxiety ridden too, and that like, well, then what is a planning board supposed to deliberate on when the code is so, you know, forgiving, and so that at least all I'm responding to is like the thinking that was discussed at the time.
I was just looking through my emails. Did that request, I'm trying to see what the request was from the NBR committee. Was that an email that we got? Because what do they want from us?
That was a discussion I had with the planner, David Gilmore. He said that there was a request. I don't know who was on the thread, but I believe it was from Joe Mano, just asking for a little historical content about the changes that were made in 2015.
Okay, so if they were asking about the village board discussion, there really wasn't a village board discussion at that time.
Right. Well, the village board was responsible for agreeing to those changes, so.
Sure.
Yeah, I understand. And the original, as I went through the history of the changes from B3 to NBR, the original, I believe, B3 had a 35-foot height restriction, which then went to 40, which then went to 50 over the course of several meetings. So I believe the B3 was 35 feet.
No,
2 stories.
so it was 35 when it was the highway district, then it went to 45. So when Jason was mayor, it went to 45 and 4 stories, and then it went to 50 in 2015 when Maurice chaired the NBR committee.
There'd be some reasonable misunderstandings, because I believe the Bean proposal, going all the way back to 2006, may have had the shorter height suggestion, but of course that was never adopted. It was Bean's recommendations. So when it was adopted at a higher permissible building structure than was originally proposed in the Bean plan. I was at most of, I might have been at all of the meetings that Maurice chaired, but I was certainly at almost all of them. And there was very considerable discussion during those meetings about each of these matters. I, for example, was not a fan of having no principal permitted uses, because I thought that would make it difficult for the planning board to consider every single proposal that came to them without being able to refer back to a baseline. But, as you say, the argument was that it gave the planning board more flexibility. They weren't bound then to say that some particular store or particular office had to be permitted. It was within the purview of the planning board to make choices based upon the well-being of the village and the development. So that was just one, but the height allowance actually escaped me. I did not remember when we came to grips with the 50-foot allowance.
From 45.
From 45, yeah. I racked my brains trying to come up with that. I have no recollection of that.
Well, I know that the process that is unfolding now with the series of public meetings, the recent public gathering to get input from members of the public, which I mentioned was attended by more than 70 people, is really ideal. I mean, it really seems to be working out well. And one of the most striking things, and there's 3 people in the room who were there today who could back this up, one of the most striking things from the public workshop was the overwhelming consensus from that process that the community wanted 3 stories. That's what, I mean, it wasn't like 50-40, yeah, 60-40. It was a strong sense that what the community wants now is 3 stories, and that should guide us as we move forward.
Sounds good. Yeah, I think we have a good committee, and Joe's incredibly thorough, so I think we're in good hands.
That's it.
Exec session.
And-
Motion to go to exec session.
Right, and if no one minds, I just want to read the communication between Nancy Branco, our treasurer, and I. On March 30th, I asked her if she had an idea when we will be paid off on the Millbrook Preserve property. The response was, we will be paying it down for the next 5 years unless I can double up on the payments. And I sent it out to everyone so you all know what her response was to me.
Okay. So is a motion to go into exec? Second?
For the purposes of?
I think we, for the purposes of discussing our water investigations and previous litigation.
I think litigation's okay, but I don't know. Is water investigation something we can?
It's related.
Okay.
Litigation and water.
Okay.
Aye.
Do we anticipate taking the action we kind of?
No, we do
Just
not
be nice to the
anticipate
reporter.
action when we leave.
You're gonna stay anyway.
He says that.
Just because you're nice doesn't mean I'm allowed to trust you.
She's turning the mics off, so.
I'll leave a spot in your skirt.
There's one more thing.
First rule of reporter school, wait for
Laugh
one.
loudly. Dennis and I basically have the same pen.
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
We actually considered that.
Yeah, just took from the press, get out of the room, yeah.
What you guys do?
Thanks.
I got you out.
Tom motion, I seconded.
That was the
Second.
Second.
All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Man, I guess I don't need to this, all right.
No sneaky business?
As a matter of procedure, Mr. Mayor, what if after the last meeting,